Why are pro drivers going faster than you if you're pushing equally, if not more? And how can they make their stints last longer than yours? It's happening all over sim racing. It's not fair when you're pushing so hard and losing to others who are pushing less. The thing with these pro drivers is that they understand how to save their tires using these 3 methods that I'm going to teach you. The first strategy is so powerful that it works every single time, yet it is so overlooked. But first, let's take a look at how a pro driver goes through the bus stop chicane in the Daytona 24. Why do you think he saved so much time here? This concept applies in every corner. Let's take a look at another example at turn 1. Now you might think it's because of lifting and coasting before the corner, and you're right, but only partially. If we take a look back at these corners, there's a pattern that guarantees their lap times to decrease. In both of these corners, the drivers lifted and coasted to save their fuel, but what you probably didn't know was that they were also saving their tires. Let me explain. Tires get worn down by 2 things: lateral forces and longitudinal forces. This means that turning, accelerating, and braking all wear down the tires. The opposite also applies. Not turning, accelerating, or braking prevents tire wear. We can see how the driver lifted off the gas pedal before the corner to minimize the longitudinal forces on the car's tires. But what if we're in a sprint race that doesn't need any pit stops? Lifting and coasting will make us much slower. How will we be able to save our tires then? Don't worry, the next strategy doesn't need any lifting and coasting. To explain what this is, let's take a look at how I took this corner. A pretty standard racing line, but did you notice my inputs? They were really slow and smooth. Compared to a pro driver, I went a tenth slower here, but it was on purpose. If we take a look at how the pro driver took the corner, we see that their inputs were very aggressive. On the other hand, if we take a look at how I took the corner, we see that my inputs were very smooth. Okay, slow inputs equals slow driving and fast inputs equals fast driving. So aggressive inputs are faster? Yes and no. Aggressive inputs wear down the tires by a lot, and over a single lap, aggressive inputs are much faster than slower inputs. But as soon as we go 3, 4, 5, 6 laps, they slowly burn through the tires, destroying them. With smoother inputs, we can drive longer and more consistently over multiple laps. The trick is knowing when to use what type of input. If you're in a qualifying lap and want to get on pole position, you use aggressive inputs. And if you're on the first lap of a 12-hour endurance race, you use smooth inputs. Okay, so what if you don't want to change your driving style? This is a lot of information to take in at once, and if you want just one thing to take away from this video, it's this. The third strategy is so simple yet so effective, and it doesn't get nearly as much attention as it deserves. What if I told you there was a button that when pressed can make your tires last longer or shorter? You probably wouldn't believe me. Well, there's a button that does just that. It's brake bias. What is brake bias, you might be asking? Brake bias allows you to put more of the car's braking pressure on either the front or rear axles. So if the car can produce a braking force of 100, brake bias lets you distribute that between both of your axles. You can put a braking force of whatever number you want on either the front or the rear tires. You can do 50% on the fronts and 50% on the rears, or 60 on the fronts and 40 on the rears. You get my point. Okay, so how can we use brake bias to our advantage? Since brake bias adds braking force onto the tires, you can use it to make either the fronts hotter and the rears cooler, or the front's cooler and the rear's hotter. With the more front brake bias, the car is going to understeer since the front tires get hotter, making them turn less. With more rear bias, the car is going to oversteer since the rear tires get hotter, making them lose grip. With this information, we can adjust our brake bias depending on the track and conditions. If you're driving on a track where you need lots of traction and exits are important, like Daytona, you would want to have a higher brake bias so your rear tires stay cooler. If you're driving on a track with lots of high-speed corners where turning is important, like Silverstone, you would want to have a lower brake bias so your front tires stay cooler. But that was just a surface level explanation. Now we're going to dig deeper. Let's take a look at turn 1 at Spa. It's a low speed corner that leads onto a really long straight. Having a good exit onto the straight is necessary if you want to set a good lap time. Knowing this, we would increase our brake bias so our rear tires have more traction on the exit. But if we go to turn 8 at Spa, we see that it's a really long corner that needs a lot of turning. Knowing this, we should lower our brake bias so that our front tires will be able to turn more, allowing us to take the corner faster. So, what am I trying to say? There's no perfect brake bias for every track. Every corner needs its own brake bias, and no single brake bias will be optimal for a whole track. We can't change our brake bias in every corner because that would take too much concentration and we might crash. So instead, try this. Try changing your brake bias every time there's an extreme sector or turn. For example, if we are going into Cops Corner at Silverstone, we would want to increase our brake bias for a better exit. But right after that is Maggots and Beckett's. We want to have a lower brake bias because it is a high-speed corner complex that needs a lot of turning. Knowing how to properly use brake bias to your advantage is an important skill in racing, but it is completely useless if you don't know how to trail brake. Click on this video on screen to learn how to trail brake. If you found this video helpful, a like and subscribe would be appreciated.